We good to go? All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining me today for Claims to Fame, when insurance meets influence on social media. Want to do a quick intro of me. I'm Warren Kegerais. I'm the Digital Engagement Manager at King County, Washington, the other KC. No one in King County calls it that, but all of my coworkers call it that. So I will let them know I was in the real KC this week. So a little bit about me. I used to be a journalist. I introduced social media to my community newsroom 16 years ago, which is more than a lifetime in social media. That was a tough sell. There weren't many of us. We all had a lot on our plate, but we quickly learned the value of social media in breaking news. From there, like many journalists, I became a public information officer for the city of Issaquah, Washington, and I launched the city's nationally recognized social media account. And occasionally I would play on-camera talent. So yes, that's me in the center of the frame in the Sasquatch suit. Fun fact, I'm not tall enough to play Sasquatch standing up, so I could only ever play him sitting down. Thanks, everyone. And now I'm a digital strategist at King County. We're the 12th largest county by population in the United States. We are the largest county by population in the state of Washington. A lot of our work involves figuring out how to connect with 2.3 million residents through social media and other digital tools. A quarter of our population was born outside of the United States, and we have more than 120 languages spoken. So we do have our work cut out for us, but it is a very rewarding position. In 2023, I was honored to be named Social Media Professional of the Year by the Government Social Media Association. So, something I'm guilty of, and many of my peers are as well, we use a lot of terms that folks who don't work in social exclusively hear but might not fully understand all the nuance, so I'm going to try and break that cycle and provide some explanation of 5 common terms I'm going to use today. One is algorithm. We all say algorithm constantly. We may not fully understand what it means. Here's what it means. It's a proprietary set of decisions, elements, and user behavior that determines what you see. Now, the algorithms also determine when you see it, how you see it, and who your content gets distributed to. Something we're going to get into later, there are often many algorithms at work within a single social app. So when we say the algorithm, it's a tiny bit of a misnomer. Another word you're going to hear me use a lot is brand. This is not a word I like, but it is a word I tolerate. So in terms of social media, we're all brands. In terms of individuals, organizations, nonprofits, everything's a brand. And a brand is simply a consistent presence that you're expressing through your interactions with your users. It's how you make others feel. Next up, we've got engagement. And that's really the reason we're all here on social media, right? It's the interactions, it's the comments, it's the likes, it's the shares, it's the views. It's also a critical way to measure how people are interacting with your social content. And then organic. Not just for produce, not just for things at the grocery store. Organic means any free activity on social media. That means likes, comments, shares, views that we're not paying for through an ad or some other type of paid promotion. And then last but not least is reach. And as the name implies, it's the number of people that a post reached. Now, reach is an important metric, but it's a tricky one because reach can also include people who engage with a post, who actually took the time to watch your video, comment on it, but it could also include the folks who just scrolled past it, whose eyes flicked over it for a second or two. So reach is an important metric, but you have to keep that in mind when you're using it. So to understand how to stand out on social media and to understand how to connect with your audiences, first we need to understand the state of social media. So use among adults in the United States is significant, but it's declining after years of slow growth. So the average person spends about 2 hours a day on social media. The average adult in the United States is spending about 2 hours a day on social media. If we look at Gen Z specifically, that number goes way up. But that is finally starting to erode after years of growth. Users are more drawn to people that they feel connected to, creators they feel connected to, than the credentials that the person that they're seeing share that content holds. So a lot of this can be done to reinforce a sense of belonging, reinforce particular worldviews, but we are much more drawn to people that we feel personally attached to than what their credentials tell us they have learned professionally. Where we're seeing this a lot is with the rise of news influencers who have supplanted the traditional role of journalist on social media. Fragmentation is everywhere. It seems like every month there's a new platform and someone in your communication shop is being asked, why aren't we on Blue Sky? Why aren't we on Threads? Why aren't we using Lemonade? Well, the truth is the fragmentation is occurring, but it's not really making a lot of changes. Most of this is happening at the margins. You should pay attention to these new platforms, but the instance of one of them breaking through is pretty rare. And we're going to talk about one that broke through here in a minute. And that one is TikTok. And the thing about TikTok is, even if you never use it, even if you're not allowed to use it because of a ban or a regulation, TikTok has fundamentally shaped the entire social media landscape. Short-form video is everywhere. Trend-driven content is everywhere. This is a result of TikTok coming into our consciousness about 5 years ago and really becoming something that is indispensable. What's interesting is how TikTok has reshaped other platforms. So Instagram launched its short-form video component called Reels. YouTube has one called Shorts. And now you're seeing a lot more short-form video content on Facebook and even LinkedIn as well. Video and social media is not new. TikTok has just packaged it in a different way, and the other companies have followed suit. And I think of this a lot like Taco Bell, where you've got the same handful of ingredients, but you're putting them together in new ways to keep consumers interested. So where do we come in? Insurance content is everywhere. You know, you think of all of the marketing, the billions of dollars that go into marketing insurance companies, all of these characters. I see Jake from State Farm more than I have seen my friends in the last 6 months. Insurance content is everywhere and it's instantly recognizable. We can't compete on budget. We can't compete on celebrity endorsements. But what we can do is emphasize our value to the public and our values through our social content. So how are we making life better for people? How are we providing an essential service? What have we done to improve the quality of your community? So that's something I want you to keep in mind today as you're thinking about how you stand out on social, is emphasizing your value and your values. So let's talk about how we get your content to stand out. And a key part of that is understanding those algorithms and those audiences on social media. So no surprise here, most US residents 13 and older are using social. It's 90% for people ages 13 to 17. It's 59% for people over 18. I imagine there's a lot of people under 12 using it as well, but the platforms don't like to talk about that because it technically violates their terms of use. The average person is using 6 to 7 platforms every month, which sounds like a lot, but then you look at your phone and you probably have a bunch of social apps there that you might not open frequently, but they're still there, they still count. Gen Z, fastest growing demographic on social media. That's people born between 1997 and 2012. And while we think of social as something that predominantly is for Gen Z or even millennials, use is increasing among adults 65 and older. So why do we care so much about generations on social media? Well, 3 reasons. 1, generational marketing helps us understand how our message is going to need to be tailored to reach different generations. And also, because what starts with younger generations on social eventually trickles up to affect the rest of us. So the things that interest Gen Z right now are things that we're paying attention to because they're trickling out into the larger culture. Soon we're going to have to figure out what Gen Alpha likes and how we're going to adapt that to the rest of us. So let's look at who's using what. Most popular platform in the United States, might surprise you, it's YouTube. And what I like about this is that YouTube is something that is broadly used by a majority of every adult age group in the United States. There are a lot of nuances in how different age groups use Instagram or TikTok or even Facebook, but YouTube has broad appeal. And I think as we're looking for ways to stand out, as we're looking for ways to make the most of limited time and limited resources, we need to be focusing on the platforms that have the broadest appeal and the biggest audiences. YouTube might not seem like a natural space for that, but I want you to keep that in mind, especially as we're talking about video today. So let's talk about content versus connections. Your interest now shape what you see on social media. This is new. It used to be that who you knew shaped what you saw on social media, the people that you were connected to. the people that you'd followed, the organizations that you'd chosen to follow. Now what you're seeing is based on your interest. The algorithms are learning what you're interested in. They are personalizing that content for you. As a result, they're prioritizing posts rather than the people that you know in real life. Now, where there's an advantage here for all of us who have to stand out on social media, who have to deliver key messages on social media, your follower count matters less than it used to. Used to be you had to amass a big audience, then you were able to reach more people. Now, the way algorithms work is your content just has to stand out, has to reach the right people, and get them to interact with it. So you don't have to go through that first step of building a big audience. Your content, if it's good enough, will reach the people that it needs to reach. And when we're looking at content, originality is prized more than anything. 46% of consumers in a recent survey said they want brands to post original content. Remember, brands, all of us. And if that content is relevant, it's going to rise even higher in their feed. So think about that. Think about standing out. We're going to talk about trends as well. Trends are great. They have a place, but original content is what people want to see. So we touched on this a moment ago, but TikTok's For You page is what redefines social. And this is a For You page that we're looking at right now. It's just a scroll of content that is personalized to you. This is mine. So yes, it's a lot of hiking destinations in Washington. It's a lot of travel, something from the monorail. But it's a highly personalized view of what you're interested in or what the TikTok algorithm thinks you're interested in. Now, why do we care if we're not using TikTok? Because all of the other platforms now have some form of this in their arsenal. So we talked about the different short-form video features that existed. This is not going away. Short-form video is going to be the dominant format for the foreseeable future. So if you're not creating short-form video now, it's a good time to start thinking about how to plan to work that into your strategy. And I alluded to this a moment ago, but those algorithms vary within a single app. So the algorithm that serves you short-form video on Instagram is totally different than the algorithm that governs what static images you see or what stories are shown to you. So keep that in mind. You can never control all of these things, but you need to be aware that with short-form video in particular, it's based on what people are interested in. It's not based on who is following you. So it's 2025. I'm legally obligated to talk to you about artificial intelligence in some way. So AI does shape a lot of what you see in your social feeds. You probably inferred that. And about a year ago, Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, said that it's 50% of the Instagram content that you're seeing on its Instagram platform. That was a year and a half ago. This was from their Q1 2024 earnings call. So you can imagine that's probably increased since then. AI has gotten a lot smarter. It's become a much bigger part of the business model for these companies. So a lot of what you're seeing is influenced by AI. Video, dominant content format, going to stay that way for some time. Right now it's short form. That doesn't mean that long form doesn't have a place. And creators have really shaped the discourse and the way that we consume content on social. So whereas it used to be we'd go onto social, we would see updates from friends and family, people we went to school with. Now we're often seeing content produced by someone who that is their job. They're a professional creator. That is a $250 billion industry now. So creators have really reshaped the way that we consume content. And this is an advantage for all of us in government, but social is a new home for search. And you may have heard this as being the place where Gen Z goes to look for information, to track down information. Where we used to Google things, now a lot of people are turning to social. What's great about this is that if you're answering questions in your content, if you're providing information that people are seeking out, that's going to show up in social search results. And 67% of consumers are searching for content on social. This is not just a Gen Z thing. So if your content is answering critical questions, if it's seeking to provide information that exists in other forms, such as your website, where people might not be able to find it, be thinking about how you can turn that into social content. So we talked about video. We need to look at just how much time we're spending on social video. So let's go all the way back to 2019, which feels like a lifetime ago. Back then, we spent a third of our time watching video on social. Now we spend 60% of our time watching video on social. That number is expected to flatten out a bit starting this year. So what caused this change? Well, the pandemic. So you can see what happened between 20 and 21. There was an 8-point jump in how much time people were spending watching social video. We all remember what that experience was like when we didn't have a lot to do. So people turned to social media. A lot of them turned specifically to TikTok. This is why we're still dealing with the ramifications of of the rise of social video. It's something that people found they liked, the platforms liked it, and it's a habit that's stuck. So 60% of the time that people are spending on social media is watching video. This isn't to say that the personal relationships that may have drawn many of us to social media aren't important. They still are. It's still the reason a lot of people are following others on social. But your content, when you put it out into the world and when you receive it, it's no longer bound by those connections. So there's a real advantage there. We also need to remember that as we're creating content as a brand, as a public agency, users are going to scroll past most of it. The average person scrolls through 300 feet of social content every day. They ignore most of it. Think of your own behavior. I interact with a teeny tiny percent of what content I see on social every day. And, sorry everyone, brand content ranks as a low priority. Sorry. But there's some good news here. 48% of people say they're interacting with it now more than they were 6 months ago. So hope is not lost. They will interact with you if you stand out, but we're not the reason they're here. Regardless of what the algorithms are serving them, regardless of what AI thinks they want, people are still here to consume things that are interested in them and keep up with people they care about. And here's the proof. When we look at the type of accounts that others follow, far and away, it's still friends, family, and people you know. Everything else is brand content. But 60%, almost, people we know. So what we want as consumers and what the social media companies want, not always in sync. Something you need to keep in mind as you're creating that content. And when we think about what people are seeing specifically, let's look at Facebook, which I think of as the place where you're receiving updates for people you know, family members of all generations. Even on Facebook, almost 36% of the content you're seeing is from something with no connection to you. So if this is the case on Facebook, imagine what it's like on other platforms as well. Those connections are something that we still personally prioritize, but the platforms have moved on. So how does this all relate to the content that we need to create, to the messages that we need to get out into the world? Audiences want to feel seen and supported by the content that we're putting out. That can take many forms. Sometimes they just want acknowledgement. Sometimes it's just to provide information that people can't find anywhere else. A key part of why public agencies invested so heavily on social media a decade ago is because we realized we needed to meet people where they are. We're all familiar with doom scrolling. I think there's probably been a lot of that going on lately. If you're not familiar, doom scrolling is where you just scroll and feel anxious about the state of everything. It's being replaced, which I think is a good thing. Consumers are building what is known as mood scrolling, where they're trying to curate a vibe. They're trying to find things that they enjoy. They're trying to find information that's relevant to them, creators that they like, content that they find inspiring. So that sort of anxiety-driven model of social media that we've been living in for a long time, it's not going away, but there's an increasing movement of people that are trying to sort of build their own tailored version of a feed through mood scrolling. Something else we can keep in mind, users always appreciate timely customer care. Survey after survey, if you're able to solve someone's problem on social media, if you're able to provide acknowledgement to a problem on social media, that is evergreen. It's always going to land well, and it's something that I think as public agencies we can provide particularly well. Because unfortunately, there are often low expectations that government can deliver, but if we're able to help solve that problem and provide that timely customer care, I think that's a real win, potential for a win. And while we think of social as something where you have to be funny or edgy to stand out, honesty is actually the most appreciated trait. So if we look at this survey of social media users from earlier this year, the traits that people associate most with bold brands, honesty and inspirational. So how does that work, right? We can't all be funny. A lot of what we do in public service isn't funny. But we can be honest. We can tell you the truth. So how does that manifest itself? By showing how we help people, by showing that we're there when something happens. I think this example from our host here in the state of Missouri is such a good one, because this is just showing up. This is an honest example of how we provide service as a public agency. So where do we get ideas for all of this? Well, answering frequently asked questions about your organization, super helpful. There's a lot of questions that people have that they might not be able to surface on your website, that you might not be able to trust Google with anymore. So use your social content to answer those frequently asked questions. You can check to see what are the most commonly searched terms on your website, what are the most frequent questions you're getting to your call centers. Use that as inspiration for your content. The other thing that you can do is react to current events and issues that affect your industry or your office specifically. And this example from our office of the Insurance Commissioner in the state of Washington, I think is a great example of that. So here's a video from Instagram that I want to show you of Commissioner Patty Kuderer reacting to a bill that was being debated in the legislature.
I'm going to recommend a yes vote on the amended bill. We want to clear up various rules and guidelines and references in the relevant RCW to how the Office of the Insurance Commissioner operates, because we want to give the new commissioner the greatest opportunity to be an effective advocate for consumers of insurance in the state of Washington. In the spirit of helping the new commissioner look out for consumers first, I'm recommending a yes vote.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
So there's a lot of things I like about this video. One, I'm never going to say it's easy to create social content, because it's never easy to create social content. There's a lot of hair pulling that goes on. But I like that it used a simple clip directly from TVW, our public affairs channel. It was a green screen of the commissioner, and then, yes, a little clip from Step Brothers at the end if you made it all the way through. So I think as you're starting to look at ways to create that content, where are you looking for ideas and inspiration? How do we react to current issues and events? Good example here. So how do we take those first steps, especially if we're not comfortable with creating content that might be a little bit out of the mold? What I want to tell you is to look at your current social media presence, audit it. See what's working, see what's not. What is your audience reacting to? What do they like? What do they dislike? They're very vocal about both of these things. Use that information to inform your future content. What's working in terms of the formats? Do you do a tip of the week? Do you do polls? Do you do quizzes? Do you do short form video? Are you doing a lot of infographics? What is that content format that's working? Or what are specific topics that are landing with your audience? How do you expand on those? You'll uncover that in your audit. And then if you have something that didn't work, don't just throw it away and chalk it up to we're never trying that again. Take a look at it using this data that you've uncovered and determine if you can rebuild it. Because I can tell you, having worked in this industry for a long time, you spend a lot of time on concepts and creating things and shooting, and then you edit it and you put it out into the universe and you think, this is great, this is going to go viral. And an hour later it has 5 likes and you're questioning a lot of choices that you've made along the way. It doesn't mean that it was bad, it just means that nobody saw it. And a lot of that could be beyond your control. So look back at those underperforming posts, see what life they might still have in them. Experiment with those post types and your topics. I can tell you that being able to just tell people what you do, what services you provide, is very powerful. People don't necessarily know what a public agency does. They just assume we collect taxes and make their lives more difficult. I like to think we do a little more than that. I can tell you that experimentation will yield a ton of data that you can then use to determine your future content types, because your audience is going to respond or not respond, and then you can react off of that. And if you're feeling a little unsure, 60% of public agency marketers, people like me who work in communications, say that most content now is meant to entertain. It doesn't have to be all vegetables. You can mix some fruit in there as well. So being able to find that balance is important. And others in our industry are doing this. So you won't be alone. You will have examples that you can point to. Entertainment is not limited to humor. This is a question I get a lot. Again, a lot of what we do in government is not funny, but entertainment can be educational. It can be behind the scenes content. It can be celebrating employees. There is a lot that you can do with entertainment that is beyond being funny or beyond reacting to memes and trends. Demystifying your organization's work is so important. This is something we're trying to do more through elevating employee content where we're highlighting employees and also sharing content that employees have created specifically on LinkedIn. So you think about it, your organizations have hundreds, in some cases thousands of employees. They're creating their own content talking about what it's like to work for you. A lot of that you could just reshare very easily. It helps to demystify what you do and the real people who do that work. And audiences want to see it. This is a tough one, but I want you to embrace your comments section. And I know that's terrifying because sometimes they can be rough. But a few things about comments. Often people just want some acknowledgement. Even if they're upset, they just want to be acknowledged. You might not change the original commenter's mind, but because those comments are visible to everyone, you might educate someone else who sees it next. And this is where people want to see you show up. They want to see you interacting with your audience. And where does that happen? In the comments section. So being able to show that you're willing to show up in your comments and interact like a human being, very important. The other thing that audiences are prioritizing is original content. So we talked about how algorithms like original content, so do audiences. This is a moment of synergy. So this is your signal. Be creating original content. So I want to share some examples here. This is from our friends at the Pennsylvania Insurance Department. This was on International Cat Day last month. Yes, that's a thing. But they had a lot of fun with it. They talked about how, the different types of felines you could be, and also, explained how you could get more information about how insurance works. So I like that this was original content, jumped on an easy trend. It's funny. Who doesn't like pets? The other thing that I want to point out here is that there was some great interaction in the comments from our friends at the Maryland Insurance Administration. So even if you're not necessarily interested in interacting with members of the public, even if that's a high bar to clear, even if there's an approval process, you can interact with your peers. So think about that. If you're looking at easy ways to interact on social media, interacting on peer agencies' content is a simple win. And I guarantee you, as a social media manager, whenever somebody from a peer agency shows up in the comments, it's a good day. So you will be making someone's day as well. So now I want to walk us through a couple of examples. The first is from the Long Beach Public Library. It's about a year old at this point, but it's an oldie and a goodie. It played off of a trend, how would I explain this, where people who aren't Gen Z are asked to speak as a member of Gen Z, using only Gen Z slang. And the library went into this with a very specific goal. They wanted to increase awareness and library card adoption among Gen Z members of their community in Long Beach. So let's dive in.
Frat summer is officially over. Visit the Long Beach Public Library and enter your dark academia era. Library cards are free? Say less. Certain desk hates to see me coming. Mama, a self-checkout machine behind you. These new releases are hot to go. Somebody cooked here. Chat is sending me. Tired on the attic? Book a study room. Our laptop kiosk will send a Victorian child in. Don't sleep on the studio. Our studio guides are based and have mad riz. Body is cheap. I fear this is my type. Who is this diva? You can return your overdue books at Book Drop. Hope this helps. When you're done at Long Beach Public Library, take a hot girl walk through Lincoln Park and touch grass. I'm sure there's other 12 locations in Long Beach. We're everywhere. We're so Julia.
5.5 million views, a ton of local media coverage in the Los Angeles area, a finalist for Post of the Year from the Government Social Media Association. But most importantly, they increased their Instagram following among people 13 to 24 by 10%. They also increased their adoption of people that were aware of the library, so it brings it full circle. They wanted to get Gen Z members of the community getting library cards using the library. First step was getting them on Instagram. Now, I had an opportunity to learn more about how they put this together. Her name is Joan. She actually gets people that show up at the library now who are excited to see her and want to have their picture taken with her, which I think is great, right? But what I love about this is it's a frontline employee in a setting that probably wasn't super comfortable for her, but it really lands with people of all ages. And most importantly for the library, it helped them achieve what their original goal was. So the next example I want to show you comes from the Transportation Security Administration, TSA. So TSA, if you don't follow them on social, highly recommend. They're really good as well at highlighting their employees in their social content.
You on your way, you're not getting it. You're trying to be on time. Listen to my words, I'll get you through this line. You grab yourself a tray, you find a spot inside. Listen, set your back to C605. Happy clean with gel or aerosol, lotion, paste, or cream. You take it out of your bag, set it through the machine. Large electronic, you place it in a bin. You send it through the extract, make sure you put it in. Your velvet coat and hat should all be removed, and don't forget your shoes. Now check that shirt and pants, avoid that pat down dance. Your pocket should be clear to get you out of here. That's all you gotta do. That's all I gotta say. I bid y'all adieu. Y'all have a great day.
So it's great, right? I love seeing this on social. I don't know that I would have loved it at 7 a.m. yesterday morning when the pre-check line was longer than the regular line. But what I love about this is that it humanizes the employees. We all have opinions about TSA. Humanizes the employees, has a bit of fun, and oh yeah, there was a key message in there. Avoid the pat down dance, everyone. Take your lotions and your creams out of your bag, of course. So no real clear message here other than, hey, you're going through airport security, here's what you need to know. But 3.4 million views. So also not planned from what I understand. This was just something that a flyer recorded in an airport, TSA got a hold of it, shared it through their official accounts. Can't get easier than that, right? So user-generated content, big part of TSA's strategy, but also a really good way of humanizing an agency that doesn't always leave people feeling the best. So why do we care so much about showing frontline employees in our content? Because this is who people want to see. They want to see who works for your agencies. They want to see who is doing the job. They also want to see the social media team. I'm not comfortable with this one yet. I will be eventually, but they want to see who's behind the accounts. So the idea of putting a face to your social media accounts, of putting a face to your organization, so important. So if you have folks in your organization that are interested in being on social or contributing to social, here's their sign. People want to see frontline employees on social media. So when it comes to new platforms and trends, choose wisely. You do not need to be everywhere. If something's not working for you, that could be a whole platform or a series that you're doing and it's just not landing with your audience, let it go. Your audience isn't going to remember that it was there in the first place. You can let it go, free up your time to do something else. If you have folks in your organization who are interested in contributing content to social or who want to learn more about social, recruit them because they're important advocates to have. If you have leaders in your organization who are maybe skeptical of social media, figure out the best way to get them on board. Everyone has an opinion on social media. I go into a lot of rooms like this where people are not receptive at all to this message because social media is a tough environment, and I fully get that. I look at it every day. But it is a key part in meeting people where they are as a public agency. So being able to convince people that it's a key part of your strategy is so important. So find those advocates and those collaborators internally. And then what are the barriers in your process that need to be overcome? If your social media approval process looks a little something like this, time to rethink it. So we talked a lot about standing out on social, and a key part of that is finding your brand voice. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's your personality on social media. It should be your tone, your style, and how you use words. Some agencies, very slang heavy, very informal. If that works for them, great. Others, a little more formal. But regardless, your brand voice should align with your agency values. You should not be representing yourself as something you're not. And something I think we could all be is conversational and service-driven. So the way that I tell people to get started down that road is say we, us, instead of the agency or the department or the commission. Just using simple language that humanizes you is a good way to get started. And across generations, audiences do value authenticity, simplicity, and trust. So your voice should complement your content, and your content should be speaking to all of those values regardless. Because branding is ultimately about what you want people to feel. And that personality that you're showing through your brand voice is meant to reinforce those relationships, the relationships that you're trying to build on social. And this is a tough one to swallow, and it took me many years to figure this out, but your voice is more important than your logo. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because we put a lot of time into the symbols that represent our agencies, but ultimately the way that we are showing up, the way that we interact, is more important than the symbol or the emblem that we put on the content. And you want to remember that you need to tailor that tone by audience and platform. What is acceptable on Instagram? Probably not going to work the same on LinkedIn. You may have a very special audience that is going to tolerate the same type of content in both places, or excuse me, the same type of voice in both places, but chances are you're going to need to tailor that a bit so it resonates in both. And if you're wondering if this is right for you, well, 40% of public agency marketers, i.e. people like me, have tested a new tone or personality on social in the last 12 months. So this is happening. People are experimenting with their brand voice just to see what works and what might work better with their audience. I'm going to show you two examples of brand voice, very different ones. First is from the Indiana Department of Insurance. This is a meme that's known as Evil Kermit. It's one of my favorites. And it's here to tell people not to fall for holiday scams. I think this is great, very effective, simple message. We all get spun up around the holidays. We're looking for a deal. Indiana Department of Insurance wants to remind you it's probably a scam. Don't click it. Next example of brand voice is from the state of California, where the insurance commissioner there responded to the Southern California fires earlier this year.
This is your insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara. I want to help you recover by getting your claims paid as quickly as possible from your insurance company. I am hosting insurance support workshops on January 18th and 19th at Santa Monica College Performing Arts Center, and on January 25th and 26th at Pasadena City College. Both run from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday and 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Sunday. These are one-on-one appointments with department experts who will connect you with your insurance representative on site. Call us at 1-800-927-4357 to make your appointment today.
So very different in terms of tone. That video has 16,000 views to date. What I like about it, it's direct to camera. It's very clear what he wants you to do, how you can interact with it as a consumer, and it's helpful information. So I think just being able to show up and speak in plain language is so important, especially during a crisis. So we talked a bit about branding. Do keep in mind algorithms are detecting logos and watermarks. They've said they won't downrank you, but if they're saying that they're being detected, just be aware. Branded content can also struggle to stand out. So brand voice becomes more important because that is unique to you. We're awash in a sea of advertisements on social. Things that look heavily branded do tend to get dismissed purely as advertising. And that sense of authenticity that we're trying to build can be undermined by a logo, which I realize sounds counterintuitive, but where audiences are at right now, they want that sort of unpolished, low production value look. So let's talk about some ways to put this into action. You can repurpose your content across platforms. You can adapt it for your messaging, your call to action, your tone. You do want to stay current on memes and trends, but again, not everything's going to be right for you. And you want to prioritize the content that has the broadest appeal and things that you could reuse in the future. So what has broad appeal? Video. Across all 4 major age groups, video, both long form and short form, is the most popular content format. I'm still struggling to understand why webinars are so popular with millennials. Masterclass, like I don't know, like why? But video is popular across generations, and as you're figuring out what content has broad appeal, video is a good indicator. Platforms roll out a lot of new features. Test them out. See what works for you. Some of them won't stick around. Some of them might catch on. But when a platform rolls out a new feature, chances are their algorithm is going to be prioritizing the use of that feature. So test it out, see how it works for you. Right now, some things that are popular, carousels. You can create carousels of images on both Instagram and LinkedIn. Polls. Polls are LinkedIn's most engaging content type, but also one of the least used. Pretty easy to run a poll. You can do it as a quiz. And then any sort of interactive content. So think Instagram stories, Facebook stories. These are good ways to get your audience engaged, and they're also what the platforms are recommending that we do right now. Think about the keywords that you're putting in your content. A few years ago, we were all obsessed with hashtags. Hashtags still serve a role, but they're way less important. Algorithms have gotten smarter at picking up what the keywords are, so you don't necessarily need a hashtag to do the same searching that you used to have to do. So think about what keywords you're putting into your post to help it stand out to the relevant audience. And you want to choose that post type based on audience. We just talked about what content is most popular across different age groups. If you have specific folks you want to reach with your content, choose that post type carefully. And this was published last month or about 6 weeks ago by Instagram. This is their cheat sheet. So this comes directly from Meta, and this tells you who to reach, who you can reach using different features within Instagram. Super helpful. So to reach new audiences, go for Reels. If you're trying to engage your current followers, think single photos, carousels, or stories. And if you have a core group of people, those are where you do your lives or your channel activity. So situational awareness, super important on social. Consumers agree, 93% say you should keep up with online culture. It is a unique place. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's weird, sometimes it's bad, but just understanding what's going on can be very important. When you're creating content, you always want to lead with your most interesting information. You have 1 to 3 seconds to get people's attention. Honestly, I think it's probably less than that. But you have to lead with your most interesting information. If it's a visual or a video, lead with the most compelling piece. If it's text-based, lead with the thing that people will remember and share with their friends later. Include one key point or clear call to action. I know a lot of what we do is complex. We need to boil it down. One key point or one clear call to action per post. You can always create more content later on. And then studies have shown that writing in second-person language, saying you in your content, is a good way to build that relationship and start building that trust with your audience. So be thinking about how to write in second-person language in your social content. Now, when it comes to trends, consumers are pretty much on board. You've got a third who say, I think it's embarrassing when brands jump on viral trends, but 40% think it's cool, great. Then there's 27% who have a very nuanced view. I think it's only effective in the first 24 to 48 hours. And you know, data actually backs this up. American Marketing Association did a study and it says trends die after about 2 weeks. So if you see something in your feed, you're already behind the clock. You now have to start figuring out what that content's going to be if you want to jump on that trend. So a few examples of trends. This is from DC's insurance agency, DISP, and they did a play on Spotify Wrapped. If you aren't familiar with Spotify Wrapped, it is what Spotify gives you at the end of every year that says, this is how much Sabrina Carpenter you listened to last year. Good luck. But what they did with it, I thought was super interesting, is they just shared some information about what the agency had accomplished. And relatively easy to set up once you've got the template. Canva had a bunch of templates. And then you're just dropping information about how your agency served consumers in the previous year. Another example, which isn't displaying, so we'll skip past it. There we go. So you may have heard Taylor Swift is dropping a new album. But before she did that, after she did that, she got engaged. I'm trying to keep my Taylor Swift timeline straight. Connecticut Insurance Department had a great play on this album cover, which isn't displaying, unfortunately. But this is a good reminder. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just grab whatever's out there and just drop your content into it. Spotify Wrapped, moments like Taylor Swift's new album drop, they're not all going to land for you, but be willing to experiment. We talked about experimenting with different content types. This is the kind of thing that I'm referring to. And if you're nervous about memes and whether they're right for you, just remember, 73% of people are fine with brands using memes in their content. It's not going to negatively affect your image. Yes, we're the government. Yes, we need to be serious, but you're not going to step over that line. I promise you. Okay. As we round out today, let's talk about what you cannot control. You can't control algorithms. They change often without notice to users. Visibility is always going to be unpredictable. The ranking, the way that content shows up for your individual people, for your individual users, that's personalized. It's going to depend on what they've interacted with previously. So what I see may be invisible to you. And then how many people your post reach depends on a number of external factors. No single post is going to reach everyone. Now let's talk about what you can control, which is how you open a post. Are you leading with your most interesting visual? Are you leading with your most interesting information? You can also customize that from post to post and platform to platform. Which platforms you choose to post on, that's up to you as a content creator. And then you also have control over your messaging. You can vary that by the platform, by the audience type, and even by the type of post that you're sharing, and adjust it to fit the context. So in conclusion, instilling that trust in your audience, building those relationships, and ultimately having your content stand out, it's about instilling that trust. And that's more important than high production values. So if high production values are the thing that are slowing you down, you can let that go, because the trust is the most important piece. Your audience insights have a ton of data about what users want to see more of and what they want to see less of. So use that as you're planning your content. And then I'll leave you with a challenge. Think about one complex topic in your agency, and what is one new content format that you could use to help explain that complex topic. And then measure those results and adjust. And with that, thank you. We have some time for questions. We have a microphone runner, so if you could just wait for her to come to you, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you. Hi.
So the fast-moving social media, 48 hours to make moves, what is the approval process like when people are really busy? There's a lot of things going on. What does that look like?
Really good question. So obviously it varies from agency to agency, but what I can tell you is that specifically the public agencies that have stood out and have been able to jump on these trends and make them work have a very streamlined approval process. And that's not to say that it was always that way. Right? So there is usually a number of steps that go into building that trust, but the agencies that are able to jump on these things very quickly, the ones that you're always seeing showing up in your feed, the National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, TSA to some degree, their approval processes are very streamlined. So I understand that doesn't happen overnight, but how that starts is showing success with that type of sort of pop culture oriented, trend oriented content, showing that to leadership, getting some buy-in, and then asking little by little for just fewer eyes on the post before it goes out the door. Great question. Yes, sir.
Oftentimes, the comments under any particular post can be a bit of a minefield, jungle, if you will. People like to post negative things and use colorful language and all kinds of stuff. Oftentimes, not even true stuff. How much should a governmental entity go back and forth with random commenters? Is that a bad look for a governmental entity or any major, entity? Or should they disable comments altogether? What do you say to that?
Good question. I'll preface it by saying I am not an attorney. I am not your attorney. No, I think so. Going back and forth, not a good look. Not a good look for a government entity, because even if it's not punching down, it can be perceived as punching down. And that's something that I think many of us try to avoid as we're trying to build trust and reinforce these relationships. The rule of thumb that I've seen and that some of our departments follow internally is you get one response, right? So we will respond one time, we will share the factual information. It is very even keeled. It often includes a link to other resources. And the knowledge there is that we're probably not going to change that person's mind. They're still going to show up in the response, colorful language, a lot of emotion, but other people are going to see that comment because there's been interaction on it. and it shows, aha, the lights are on. Someone is home. There is a human being here. So even if I don't agree with the government's position, I know that I can interact with somebody there. So I think that part helps. In terms of disabling comments altogether, this is something we talk about a lot. Our legal counsel has said you can disable all comments, but you have to disable all comments. So that's it. They're all off, because then there's no viewpoint discrimination. When nobody can express their viewpoint, there's no viewpoint discrimination. What has held us back is that we know the social media algorithms penalize content that does not allow interactivity. So to reiterate, I think I would say, if you're willing to respond one time, that's plenty, knowing that you're not going to change that person's mind, but knowing that you could potentially reach others. And then I think the last thing I'll say on this is there are some times when something is just really offensive or inappropriate, and we're just not going to interact with it, right? Don't even dignify it. Just keep moving. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, everyone.